Welcome to the Virtual Parent Academy. I am Stephanie Sahadeo, the Virtual Parent Academy moderator for this event. We are excited to have you join us this evening for the first Virtual Parent Academy of this school year. Tonight's session is titled Character Lab. OCPS Parent Academy is a district-wide initiative designed to enhance student achievement through the support of community and family involvement. The Parent Academy focuses on three primary tracks: student achievement, parenting and advocacy, and personal and individualized growth. The Parent Academy provides a wide range of information enabling parents to make informed decisions about their child's educational journey. I would like to take a moment to say welcome and thank you to everyone this evening that is logging into our first session. I'd like to welcome Dr. Angela Duckworth, renowned scientist, professor, author, founder, and CEO of Character Lab. Dr. Duckworth and Character Lab have partnered with OCPS since 2017. During this virtual session, Dr. Duckworth will share how parents can foster the mindsets, skills, and environments that support the social, emotional well-being of all students. Let us begin.
Hi, I am Angela Duckworth, and this is my very messy home office, but I feel like we're friends because you are OCPS parents, and OCPS is kind of, I don't know, I want to say a BFF for Character Lab. We are more than thrilled to be now longtime partners with Orange County Public Schools. We have the same interests in mind. We are both passionate about helping all kids thrive. And as a parent myself of a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old, I am thrilled to be sharing with you some of the research that I've done, that other scientists have done, that will actually help parents do a better job, we hope, of helping our kids develop into the kind of people that are beneficial to society and also who live great lives for themselves. In fact, you might even see one of my kids come in, who knows? I have a big sign on the door that says do not disturb, but it hasn't worked yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to my slides. I'm going to share a little bit about what I have learned as a scientist about character, and I'm then going to stop sharing my slides and wrap up with a few tips that I think might be especially relevant at this time of the year and frankly this time in history. So let's begin with the big question: what builds character? And to answer that, I think I have to talk more about what character is. So when I think of character, I think of grit and generosity and curiosity. Frankly, I think of a lot of things that I want my daughters to grow up to develop. And one way to take this very long list of character strengths, I like to say that character is plural because it's not just one thing, it's lots of things. One way to make it more manageable as a mom, for me, is to think of my daughter's strengths of heart, strengths of mind, and strengths of will. These are three kind of natural families of these positive qualities that we like to call character. And by the way, you might call them in your family life skills, and you might call them, values or personality. A lot of educators call these social and emotional learning capabilities, but that's a lot, it's a mouthful. So I like the word character. It's what Martin Luther King and also Maria Montessori used to describe what they thought education should be about, in addition to, of course, academics. So these three families of heart, mind, and will are really about interpersonal character strengths, intellectual character strengths, and kind of achievement, or sometimes they're called intrapersonal. They're like you achieving your own goals. These are these three families. And as you can see on the slides, they give a sense of the complete development of a child. If a young person is developing in all three of these ways, they are learning to relate in positive ways with the society at large, with their neighbors, with their friends, other people. If they're thinking on their own, if they're intellectually curious and also intellectually humble, and also if they're getting a lot done, they know how to set goals, make plans, achieve them. They know how to stay optimistic when things are tough. I think that kid has a great chance of thriving in life. Now, what does build character? Again, just to simplify things and make it manageable as a parent, you might think of at least three things that will influence the development of the young person in your life who is probably the center of your universe. The first kind of factor, I guess I'll say, is mindsets. And I'm sure you've heard that term before. You've probably heard of growth mindset. What is a mindset? A mindset is a belief. You have a mindset, I have a mindset. In fact, we have multiple mindsets because we have multiple beliefs. And some of these beliefs that your young person in your life is developing could be adaptive and accurate. Like, for example, the belief that intelligence can grow. That's an adaptive and accurate belief. But you might have a different mindset, a fixed mindset that you can't really change your intelligence. You know, if you're not a math person in fourth grade, you'll never be a math person. That's a maladaptive and inaccurate mindset. So you ask me, like, what builds character? Where do these character strengths come from? How do I help my daughter or son develop more of a given character strength? A lot of our behavior, a lot of who we are is what we believe. And so we'll talk more about mindsets, but mindsets are different from skill sets. I think in addition to having adaptive and accurate mindsets, your son or daughter needs to develop skills, strategies, ways of managing that are not what they believe, but what they know how to do. And then finally, and maybe most important, if you ask me, where do mindsets and skill sets even come from? And what about opportunities? What about structural opportunities? What about fairness? What about having society that is free as much as possible from racial bias? What about making sure kids can actually succeed when they have the mindsets and skill sets that are adaptive? All of these questions point us to the importance of context, the circumstances in which kids grow up. And that includes, by the way, their parents. And so you are part of their context, maybe the most important part of their context in many ways. School is another big thing, and that's why we're so honored to partner with OCPS. So for any character strength that you have in mind that you really treasure in your family, be it gratitude, be it social intelligence, be it curiosity, be it grit, whatever it is that you're thinking, oh, this is a character strength I would love my child to develop, I want you to think, what are the mindsets, the skill sets, and the context that will promote the development of that character strength? I know a lot about one character strength in particular because I study it, and that's grit, the combination of long-term passion and perseverance. It's kind of steadfastness in pursuing things that are meaningful to you, but they're going to take a long, long time to achieve. And so I'll use grit as just an example because I know a lot about it, but not because I think it's the most important thing for young people to develop. And in fact, if you ask me, what does a bookshelf of character strengths look like for a developing child? It's not just grit. It's also lots of things that, you know, we made mention of, but more. I will take my book off the shelf just to use it as an example. Before I move on to the next slide about mindset, I just want to say, like, the very origin of the idea of grit is that it's not talent. It's not your potential, but what you do with it. What I really believe is true of high achievers, which is that they don't rely on being gifted for doing things. They know that they have to work really long and really hard and stay committed to something to get anywhere. I mentioned already growth mindset as just one of these beliefs, but I think it's such an important one that might incline a young person, like the young person in your life, to develop grit. A growth mindset, as I mentioned, is the belief that abilities like intelligence can be developed. A fixed mindset is the opposite. And it turns out when you're winning, it doesn't really matter that much whether you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, but so often in life we're challenged, right? I mean, my own daughters have had their highs and lows. Some tests, great. Other exams, that's not what we expected. I failed my first 2 big science exams when I was in college. And that's where a growth mindset helps. When you are challenged and you think, oh my gosh, I can't do this. A growth mindset inclines you to say, I can't do this yet. And a fixed mindset inclines you to think, I can't do this ever. And you can see why it's so important then for a gritty, resilient response, because without a growth mindset, there really isn't a reason to keep trying, to take your 3rd test, to try something new, to redouble your efforts. So as a parent, I recommend to you that if you care about character strengths, including grit, you might think, what mindsets are my daughter or son developing, and how is that influencing how they show up and motivate themselves in the world. I find in my very recent research, collected with the help of lots of people of the sort who come to work at Character Lab, people who are not afraid of doing work in schools that itself is really hard. We find when you collect data repeatedly from students that growth mindset predicts the development of grit, which predicts the development of growth mindset, which predicts the development of grit. And you can see, and maybe you can even remember times in your own parenting where you could see a virtuous cycle where your child got encouraged, they believed they could do something and they tried, they took on more challenges and really worked hard, and that just affirmed that belief in the first place. And that is what our data are showing. What about skill sets? Well, one of the skill sets that young people need to develop in order to be gritty is the skill set of practicing. And practicing, of course, is something you do to build skills, but itself is a skill. Practice itself is something that students need to learn how to do. And I've got a little picture of a laptop computer here because I did a study some years ago now where I showed kids a screen like this where they learned about how experts practice. I wanted them to develop the skill sets that experts had, the ability to fail, to get feedback that's frankly quite frustrating, and to not overthink the role of talent. I wanted them to learn to practice the way experts practice. And I knew that from my own experience as a student and also as a former teacher that wasn't always being taught in schools. And in particular, what we emphasized in this online activity that middle school students did is that when experts practice, they break things down. They have a skill of actually dividing anything they are working on into its own sub-skills, like tiny little parts, and then practicing each one with focus, and then getting feedback, even when that feedback is negative, reflecting on that feedback and starting over. And I thought that was a very important skill set for young people to develop. Here's a video from Wynton Marsalis, the great jazz musician, who gives a pretty charismatic summary of what this kind of skill looks like and how young people can develop it.
Some people are so good at what they do, you doubt you could ever be as great. Are they born with it? Not at all. Research shows that you can become an expert too with the right kind of practice. Expert practice has 3 steps. First, take the thing you want to do well, break it down into smaller parts, and pick one part that's just a little harder than what you can do now. Second, practice that one skill with absolute concentration. Even short practice sessions are powerful if you focus completely. Third, seek feedback on your performance and reflect on that feedback. Now, expert practice is not always easy, but as you perfect many small skills, you begin to see how the whole improves to create dazzling mastery. Great musicians, doctors, writers, and athletes all use expert practice. They use it as students too. You can become great at whatever you envision. What will you choose to master?
Okay, what happens when kids learn the skill set of practice? What happens when they understand why practice has to be frustrating sometimes, and why they can't always do things right away, and why when things are hard, they shouldn't think they're stupid. They should just think, oh, I'm practicing like an expert. Well, here's a screenshot of where we did this activity in a computer lab, and you can see that some of the gray screens are there, and then some of the computer screens are actually colorful. And what happened was that after this activity, students were able to go into the math lab or the computer lab and either choose between doing difficult, challenging math problems, those are the gray screens, or doing anything else they wanted to do in the computer lab that day. Now, the trick was that only half of the students saw the activity that I just described. Another group of students, the other half of students, did a control activity, which wasn't anything about the skill set of practice. And here's what we found. You give young people 3 opportunities to do this kind of expert practice that's really hard but really good for skill development. And the first time they do a certain amount, the second time they do less, and the third time still less. So expert practice is hard, and a lot of students would rather do easy, fun things like watch videos. But what happens when students actually understand the science of how experts practice, the skill that experts bring to their technique? Well, then you see that yeah, they might be doing less, but they are doing relatively more. And this study, I think, demonstrates the power of a research study on, how, practice works to actually change real behaviors in real kids' lives. If your son or daughter knew that great performers like Wynton Marsalis got that way from breaking their work down into sub-skills, practicing with 100% concentration, and then getting feedback on what they did wrong, and then doing the whole thing over again, maybe they too might do a little bit more practice or studying. And maybe like the students in this study, especially the underachieving students, those who are below average, they might increase their report card grades. That's what we found in that study. Okay, growth mindset, learning skills like how to practice like an expert. And then finally, I talked about context. Here's a study of school culture. I think importantly, classrooms and schools are a context that influence young people. And in this study, we had students surveyed at the beginning of the year endorse or not endorse, depending on what they felt, statements like, in my school, making mistakes is okay as long as we're learning. That's an indicator that that student perceives their culture to be growth-oriented. There were other questions on the same survey, though, that were about other kinds of cultural values, like, in my school, if you're smarter, you get treated better. What we found in this study that was run across a number of schools is that the more students endorsed culture statements like the one I just showed you, the greater their increases in grit over the following school year, and the greater their increases in GPA relative to others over that school year. And that tells me that culture matters, that classroom and school cultures matter, and that cultures that value growth and continued challenge are the cultures that may be friendly to the development of grit, which may lead your students, your kids, to achieve their goals and their dreams. Now, I'm going to put my book back on this shelf. Characters plural. It's not the only book on the shelf. But I think for all these books on the shelf, you might think, what are the mindsets, the skill sets, and the context that might help my adorable young person in my life develop these character strengths that will help them lead amazing lives for themselves and amazing lives so that the whole world is better.
So what is this thing, self-control? It was Freud who said that the ego discovers that it is inevitable at some point in the development of a child. It is inevitable to postpone the obtaining of pleasure, to put up with a little unpleasure, and to abandon certain sources of pleasure altogether. It was Freud who said that delaying gratification, controlling your own self, was an important milestone on the path to adulthood. It was Frog and Toad who said that willpower is trying hard not to do something that you really want to do. And really, Frog and Toad and Freud are talking about that same thing, that inner conflict that if you are human, you've had. Something feels good right away, like one more chocolate chip cookie, which is what Frog and Toad are eating here. And another thing, a salad, going for a run, whatever it is better for you in the long run, but not so fun in the moment. That is what Freud was talking about. That is what Frog and Toad are talking about. That is actually a strength of will that, in addition to grit and growth mindset and optimism, is an important part of life. So I'm going to describe to you 4 strategies that come before response modulation. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to try harder. 4 strategies that I think are more proactive, more efficient, more effective. Situation selection, choosing where you are. Situation modification, changing where you are. Selective attention, focusing on something that's going to help you delay gratification. And then cognitive reappraisal, rethinking your situation, framing it in a different way, using a different mindset. Finally, old-fashioned willpower, the latest, the last, and in my view, the least effective strategy that you can put in the bottom right hand of the WHOOP form for your plan. Let's begin with situation selection. If you are a Penn student and you come to work for Dr. Duckworth is going to ask you to sit in the front row of your classes. And you will ask me, my psychology classes or your class? And I say, well, you work for me now, you're going to sit in the front row of all your classes. And they say, well, that's fine, but why? And I show them this picture. If you are in the front rows of your lecture hall, you are feet away from the speaker who is going to see you checking your email and looking at Facebook or sleeping, and it's going to be harder for you to do it. If you select to be in the front of the class, it's going to be easier to do well in that class. And I have actually collected data on my own classes, and I find that that is exactly true. What about what you do after you are where you are? There's still time to modify your situation. Here's a verbatim quote from a teenager in a study. I would shut off my phone and put it in a drawer so I wouldn't be tempted to touch it. Raise your hand if you've ever done something like put your phone off, put it away, right? Raise your hands. This is situation modification. You are where you are, but you can still change that situation. What do you do after you've chosen where you are and maybe you've modified it? And now what's left? Well, now we go into strategies that are in the head. And first, there's where you pay attention, selective attention. What about kids looking out the window in school? Now they're actually looking away from what they ought to be looking at, like you, and whatever's on the whiteboard or the blackboard. I think this is why KIPP teachers, do I have any KIPPsters in the house? This is why slanting and tracking at KIPP are now part of culture. What do I mean by slanting? Well, that's sit up, listen, ask and answer questions, nod for understanding, and track the teacher. What is tracking? Tracking is looking at the speaker with your eyeballs, and ideally, I would say, with your shoulder points, right? And I've been in the back of KIPP classrooms where the teacher goes over here. Thank you for tracking me, by the way. And then they go over here, and the kids turn their heads, and a young girl in the back asks a question, and the entire class swivels and turns around, because those KIPP teachers know that where you put your attention actually is a self-control strategy. And if your eyeballs are on the speaker, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier for you to keep focusing on them than if your eyeballs are sitting, somewhere else, staring out the window. What about changing the way you think of things? You've chosen where you are. Maybe you've changed it. You've chosen where to pay attention. But what about the way you frame that situation? What about your mindset? It was Shakespeare who said, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. I showed this to my own two girls, and they were like, that's dumb. Of course they're like, what if I cut off your arm? Wouldn't that? I'm like, yes, but I think Shakespeare was trying to say that a lot of life is the way you frame it, right? So I know there are things that are objectively bad, but there is a lot of wiggle room in your own mind. When we interview high school and middle school students, half the time when we ask them for advice about how to do better in school, they say things like this: just deal with it and study. Just do it. Just don't be a baby. I think there's 4 other things that can go into that last box for WHOOP. You can select a better situation. You can change your situation to advantage. You can select to pay attention strategically. You can change your mindset about interpreting your situation before your last resort of just using response modulation, just using willpower. My final slide is an homage to William James, who actually inspired Educator Summit. In 1899, William James delivered a series of talks to teachers. He called them Talks to Teachers on Psychology. And he was asked to do these talks to classroom teachers around Harvard University by the trustees of Harvard University. And in one of his talks, he said to the teachers who were listening, our virtues are habits as much as our vices. Our nervous systems have grown to the way in which they've been exercised, just as a sheet of paper, once creased or folded, tends to fall forever afterward into the same identical folds. WHOOP can become a habit. You can just do it all the time, so you don't have to think so hard. You become an expert WHOOPer. The habit of doing expert practice, the habit of asking for feedback on one thing you can do better, that you can do over and over again until it's almost on automatic. The habit of, before starting every lesson, building a connection to something your kids already care about, that can become a habit. And in fact, I think of teachers as paper folders, because those kids come into your class and they're going to do something over and over and over again. And those creases are going to form. And they're going to form in one way or the other. And we can use psychological science to make those creases fold in ways that help all of your kids thrive. Thank you so much.
If you want to learn more, I want you to go to characterlab.org. And when you're there on our website, you might find the link for the Character Lab Research Network. This is the friendship that I described. This is why I think of OCPS as a BFF, because OCPS is a founding and really, I would say, keystone partner in a network of schools that stretch across the country, working hand in hand with scientists like me and with Carol Dweck and with other amazing scientists, really, who are working on how young people thrive. And this network, this partnership between schools like the OCPS schools and scientists like me, I truly think is going to revolutionize how parents, even a generation from now, think about how to help their own kids grow up to be the people that they want to be. And practically speaking, on characterlab.org, you can find tips. I send out a tip every week during the school year. The summer is my season off, but very soon it'll be time to start writing again. Tips that are written for you, for parents, and also for educators. One piece of actionable advice, ideally that you can read in 60 seconds or less, with one thing you can try out that week that is based on rigorous scientific research. So visit us at characterlab.org, sign up for the tip of the week. You'll also find playbooks on strengths like grit or curiosity, like gratitude and social intelligence, a kind of a Wikipedia, if you will, of the character strengths that most of the parents that we talk to are really motivated to learn more about, more depth there and more authoritative information than you can find in most other places. In fact, in maybe any other place that I've looked on the internet. And finally, let me end with gratitude, at least the slide shows, which is to say that our work is supported 100% philanthropically by individuals and foundations. And that means that all of the work that we do in partnership with OCPS comes at no charge to you as a district and to you as parents. Big picture on character, but what do we do right now? I mean, as a parent, I am thinking of two things. I am thinking it is about to be the very beginning of the school year. And I am also thinking that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I think it cannot be ignored, and it must ultimately be applauded that we are in the midst of a great awakening in this country to issues of race and opportunity versus a lack of opportunity that have been a long time coming. So at this critical juncture in the history of the country and what's going on in your family life, what advice do I have as a scientist? Well, the first one is the fresh start effect. So at moments like these, when you know that you're beginning a new thing, right, the new school year, or you have some other kind of like big event, it can also happen with birthdays or January 1. Scientists have found that psychologically it's very powerful because it's a fresh start. This means that if the pandemic so far hasn't been going so well in terms of your daughter or son's productivity or their chores or even their mood or their routines, that you can use this to say, you know what, this is a fresh start. And I would even use that language, like, it's the beginning of the school year, and you might want to signal it somehow. A lot of times in my life, I would signal to myself it's the start of the school year because I would go out and buy school supplies. I don't know if you did that, but and my parents let me buy one nice outfit for the first day of school. If you want to come back to those rituals to emphasize this is a fresh start, what we did before, clean that slate. And I think that will maybe help students capitalize on the fresh start in ways that are very hard to, frankly, in the middle of the pandemic, because, we're not really going back to school in quite the same way that we have been used to. All right, that's one recommendation, fresh start effect. Second one is advice giving. So advice giving is something that parents do naturally. I give my daughters advice all day long, and frankly, they don't always take it. So what we found on research done at OCPS schools, in fact, is that when you ask your teenage son or daughter in particular, but I think it works on younger kids too, to actually think of what the best advice that they would give to other students, it goes better. So let me just make this concrete. Imagine that you ask your son or daughter the next time you thought, oh gosh, I really wish they would stop procrastinating, or, get prepared, or instead of saying like, I have advice for you about how to stop procrastinating, or, plan your time better. I think the way that you're going to get to their motivation better and get them to listen more is to ask them, what advice do you have on procrastinating? Because I'm finding like I'm getting behind on my work, or sort of on my phone all the time. What advice do you have for me? Or if you have multiple children in a family, you could say like, oh my gosh, Lucy's really like falling behind on her work. Amanda, what advice do you have? And I ask Amanda that, actually thinking that when Amanda starts like verbalizing all this great advice, that she herself might benefit. And that is what we found with OCPS high school students, that when they gave advice, verbalized, how you should stop procrastinating, how to stay motivated, how to stay off your phone, they themselves, the advice givers, are the ones who benefited. So my second piece of advice is ask your son or daughter what their advice is these days, as opposed to giving them advice all the time. And the final thing is that, parenting is never easy. I think one thing to keep in mind of, adolescents right now who are really struggling, because this is developmentally the time in life that you're supposed to be separating from adults and like on your own, and especially separating from your parents. And now they're stuck with us way more hours of the week than they want to, and probably desperate to hang out with their friends. I think the other thing to know about adolescents is that they have a lot of energy right now in this time of their life to care about fairness and to care about broader social issues. And if you have, like I have, seen my daughters really engaged in understanding and protesting murders that have pointed to structural problems in our society, I think you should help them find ways to really sustain those commitments and actually make them real. So if you care about these things, is there a way to get involved in a more long-term way than a single protest? Can you become part of a community organization? Can you begin tutoring, even if it's via Zoom in your community? What can you do to make your rage and your desire to make society a better place, which adolescents have in spades? Like, how can we help them to sustain and to make those commitments more meaningful and more actionable? So in sum, this is a really hard time for all kids, for all parents. Capitalize on the fresh start effect, turn a new page, go out and, maybe on Amazon, buy some new school supplies, get a new outfit, dress up for your Zoom classes, use all those landmarks to tell your mind and your body this is a fresh start. Number two, ask your young people in your life what their advice is, and you'll find that they might benefit themselves. And then finally, enjoy and honor and maybe help your young people care in the ways that they, I'm sure, fundamentally and intrinsically do about issues that are larger themselves. It will definitely be the young people who make the world a better place, and I'm sure you knew that already. So I'm here just to remind you of that and to tell you that there's really solid science saying that young people really are the visionaries, and that if we can help them make the world a better place, then it will ensure posterity is in a better place than we've left it. So thank you again for your partnership and your friendship. And I very much look forward to the end of the pandemic so that I can fly down to Orlando and give you all a big hug and celebrate an ongoing partnership that I hope lasts, frankly, forever.
Thank you, Dr. Duckworth, for sharing this great information on Character Lab. We know that some students will be learning at home through LaunchEd or OCVS, and some will be learning face-to-face. I want to take a few minutes to talk about LaunchEd and some additional resources. Launchpad is where students access instructional software, textbooks, and more. Canvas is how teachers and students communicate regarding school assignments. Skyward is where teachers post student attendance and grades. LaunchEd is the digital learning program of Orange County Public Schools. It is an immersive and interactive learning experience offered at all schools in the district. Digital learning combines technology, digital content, and instruction to strengthen a student's learning experience. LaunchEd provides students access to world-class digital tools and resources that allow them to be collaborative, connected, critical thinkers and problem solvers, and creative and innovative. On LaunchPad, students can find all of the resources needed for learning. The My Backpack app contains the core resources organized by class. Canvas is a great tool for parents to use to keep up with their students. Canvas Parent Portal can be used to check students' grades, attendance, update lunch forms, find field trip information, and have access to digital resources for students. Canvas Parent Portal is a great way to monitor students' grades and assignments to ensure that they are staying on track in their classes. Parents don't need to wait for a progress report or report card to see the grades. They can see them right as the teacher is inputting them. This is a great feature for parents to use for middle and high school grades to ensure that they are not missing any assignments that need to be turned in or to ensure success of a class. Access to Canvas will be provided through Parent Launchpad Portal. Launchpad Parent Portal accounts are created based on parent-guardian data shared when registration for a child is completed in OCPS. The Skyward Family Access Portal is created and maintained for families to view students' educational progress. The portal provides demographic information, schedule, assignments, calendar events, grades, attendance, discipline, test scores, activities, and graduation requirements. Families will be able to view the student details and monitor progress. You can use the publicly accessible OCPS Resource Portal to access additional information about all OCPS digital resources. Lastly, remember, you can follow Parent Academy on social media, on Twitter, #OCPS Parent Academy, and we'd love you to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/OCPS Parent Academy. Check the website at www.parentacademy.ocps.net to register for the upcoming Parent Academy and virtual Parent Academy dates. We'd love to see you there. Thank you for tuning in to the OCPS Virtual Parent Academy. Have a great rest of the evening.